Hello everyone, welcome back to the Plunder Den. In this week's episode, we're going to build some forest terrain. So with the recent release of Fire on the Frontier, I really didn't have any terrain that was, I'd say, appropriate for that area of the world. So I really needed to build something. And I really wanted to have terrain with water features in it. So I did do that fountain a few episodes back, and really that's kind of a proof of concept. I was really trying to work through, is it possible to put resin over drywall compound and foam? So I didn't really know if that was going to work, and it did work in the fountain. So I wanted to expand on that. And I have some other future projects in mind with water features. And this is kind of I feel, more of a step up in a larger area, pouring resin, and see how I can get that to work. So let's take a look at the finished piece here. So this is what we're going to be building in today's episode. You can see there's some water feature right here. It's kind of a river going through a little forest scene here. We got like a little cliff, and we got a dead birch tree coming across there. So really kind of lots of different components to this piece. This is built on dollar store foam board, and I know that a lot of people would use maybe MDF or something a little more sturdy to build their forest terrain on. But I wanted to build it on something a little more lightweight. And all my jungle terrain and everything else I've built is just on dollar store foam board. And I usually use craft paint and drywall compound to seal this in and make it sturdy. And I did the exact same thing on this particular project as well. Now I did have some challenges with the resin, and we're going to cover that when I get down to the video. We'll talk about some of the challenges I had, and so you don't make the same mistakes I did. But I was able to recover. And I'm really happy with the finished product. So I can't wait to get down to the table and show you guys how I built this. All right, if you like what we're doing here on the Plunder Den, make sure you smash that like button and consider subscribing to the Plunder Den and get first-hand information when I start these kind of projects. All right, everyone, let's get down to the table and let's start painting and let's start crafting. Okay, I started this project really by planning it out. So this is the planning stage. I kind of had a rough idea what I wanted to do. I knew I wanted a river to go through it and kind of do a bend around a cliff area. And really that's just insulation foam that I've carved into, rough shapes with my X-Acto blade there. And kind of just laid out what I want to see here. I just kind of briefly put some trees on there just to kind of plan out where I'd want them. This is not exactly where they ended up, but just kind of some idea. Also, I placed some minis just to see how it all looked. So then I started working on texturalizing these insulation foam rock pieces I've kind of made here. So I started off with some sandpaper, sanded them out nice and smooth. And then I used a foil ball, a tinfoil ball. You can just see it on the corner of the screen there. And I added that texture first. And then I stuck it into a coffee tin and shook it around with those rocks. And then I used this tacky glue and glued the large pieces together. And then I kind of showed you a plate of smaller stones that I added on afterwards. This is all, of course, insulation foam on the plate, and what I have on here is all the same thing, except for of course, what is sitting on that's dollar store foam board. So I pretty well got what I wanted to look like, my design. And it's all glued on. Kind of give it the old tip test. Make sure nothing's going to fall off. But just kind of explain the layout. So now I'm going to move on to adding drywall compound. So I really need to spend some time in the riverbed. and the outer edges, as this is going to hold the resin in place. It's going to be super important that I don't miss any spots. So again, last one I did was a fountain, and now I've moved on to this is quite a lot more complicated piece when it comes to this. So I really just use my finger and go into that bucket and just start spreading it around. I like to use the stuff that is pink when you put it on and it dries white. So once you see it go completely white, then you know it's dry. I just need that easy reference. I know there's other drywall compounds out there where you don't need that, but I find it easier to use that. So I spent a lot of time getting in there into all the different areas. I probably, maybe the next time, I probably wouldn't have glued that very top stone on there. It was really hard to get in underneath there to get the drywall compound in there. And if you need to spread this around, obviously it looks like I'm struggling there. You could add water, and that makes it a little easier to spread that compound. But I went over this for quite some time to make sure that I sealed everything in. So then once I was satisfied with the drywall compound, I moved to the multi-surface black craft paint. And I'm going to cover all the different pieces here. Actually, I'm going to cover the entire piece with black craft paint. This kind of seals everything in. And I let this dry 24 hours because I wanted to make sure that it had a good bond and it was completely dry. As I mentioned, I'm going to pour resin in there, so I want it to be completely covered. So then I moved into using my standard earth tones to put the undertones on this piece. So real brown is the first one I used. And then I'm going to move on to the bark brown is the next color. And again, we're just putting those undertones on there. But this also is going to build strengths and add more durability to the piece with all those extra coats of craft paint. It just makes it stronger and stronger every time I add new colors to it. So then we're going to move to Pueblo. I've used in all the other pieces that I've built. Same thing. Just going to highlight different areas. At this point, I didn't put any of the Pueblo into the riverbed. I did do the stones that are in there and all around it, but I didn't put any in the riverbed. I'm going to paint that a different color. So I'm going to get to that in a minute. But that's what I'm illustrating here. I'm just kind of pointing out all the different areas I painted with it. And then I'm going to move to the camel. So camel's my go-to for undertone for stone. But I like to switch my brush, so I didn't use the same brush for all the other colors, and now I'm switching the brush to a clean brush. So this is after I've added all the camel. I've dry brushed it on to the stones, and that came out pretty good. I'm pretty happy with that. Now I made it a little lighter over in that one area. I had some idea of making it a little shallower in the riverbed on that one side. So then I'm going to go to my standard desert yellow, skeleton bone, necrotic flesh, and mummy robe as my stone colors that I like to use. This is also, I like to use skeleton horde. So I've been that's a contrast paint. I've been adding that to the stones as well. And this is something new, Sterling Mud. So in my local hobby store, I saw this in there, and it's a technical paint, and it's something I wanted to try, Citadel technical paint. Just add a little bit of mud to certain areas. I think that would be a nice touch. So I figured I'd try that product out. I figured this would be the perfect project for it. So it's just showing you a little bit of the first color, the technique I used. I usually don't show them because I've shown it in several other videos. But I figured I would show what I do here for the dry brushing. So I got my Army Painter dry brush there. And I plan on doing all the colors this way, except for the contrast and the technical paint. That will be done with a little flat brush instead, and just hit certain strategic areas I think that would need it to add some some highlights and some colors and some mud. So this is after I've applied everything. I've applied the mud, I've applied the contrast paint, and all those stone colors. So then I moved over to adding some deep blue, ultramarine blue, crystal blue, and wizard orb. I've never used wizard orb before, but it's kind of a nice greeny blue color. And really what I wanted to do is paint that riverbed kind of lighter to the edges and darker to the center. And I'm really just building up layers underneath that resin. And just so it gives it a more depth to the feel to the water. It's a flat piece, so I don't have any, it's not a deep piece, so I need to add that illusion by adding blue underneath, a blue tone underneath. So then I decided to make these trees birch trees. And I don't like the way they look from the store. They have the plastic stems. So I ended up covering them with black craft paint and then used all my standard undertones, real brown, bark brown, Peblo. Just really creating the foundation for birch trees. I want to turn these two here into birch trees. So once I've covered all those trees with paint, I moved on to gluing them on. I used some tacky glue and glued these on. If you're interested in how I paint birch bark, I did spend a lot of time of it in those fortification videos. Chevaux de Free, those when I built those, I spent a lot of time making birch bark. So I really go through the steps there if you really want to know how to paint that birch look. Refer to those videos. All right, so now we are going to glue some of the stones underneath, and I do recommend doing this on a piece of newspaper, and just so you can catch the remnants when you they fall off. I usually use a paintbrush and wipe the PVA glue on where I want to put it, and then I just kind of dump some gravel and little stones just to add. I usually do the stones first before I move on to the flocking, some grasses and stuff and small shrubs. So then again, I'm just showing you I'm using the same two things. And there's my assorted tufts. I got a bunch of army painter tufts here. I also got some steppe grass, which I have upside down here. So this is good for putting on this kind of stone. And also this field grass. I also have these tall grasses that I like to use around riverbeds. So I want to add that as well. Just adding a whole assortment of plant life all over this piece. The more, the better. In real life, it would have lots of multiple different types of plant life. So then I built this birch tree out of a dowel and some matchsticks. I know it doesn't look like much right now, but once you paint it up, it'll look like what it should. But I just carved that up with a X-Acto blade. So I'm just deciding how I'm going to keep the resin in. So I was planning on sticking this with glue and this tape. And I can see that little plastic shield I'm going to use to keep the resin into the riverbed. And this is a new product, this Art Minds Blue Water Effect, Waterscape resin. And it's got a blue tinge to it already, so it's colored. So this should give it a real deep blue feel to it. So I'm just showing you kind of, I taped it first. That's how I got it on there. And then I used this tacky glue because I want to have a real tight fit on either side. And I just figured I could cut it off afterwards and repaint those areas. That was my initial plan. So following the instructions, it told me to pour from the center, but it actually told me to use a stick to push it out to the edges. And I think my biggest mistake was here is I dumped the entire bottle in there. And this was a disaster. And you're not going to see it on this video, but I'm going to explain what happened. Essentially, I swamped it. It went over the stone areas that I built. So it's shallower on this side, probably because it's a tad higher. I remember I made it a little taller on the reverse side, those shallows I was making. Well, let's just say that the resin got over the stone wall that I created, which did hold. So the drywall compound and the craft paint did its job and kept all the resin in from getting off the sides. So this is after I've let it dry for about 11 hours at this point. So once it spilled out over the edges, I had no choice but to let most of the resin out, which was kind of a good thing because I got all that extra resin out of there. And I was able to really highlight the bottom there where you can see the marks that are in the resin there. That's from the drywall compound. So when I originally put the drywall compound on there, I was setting the foundations for water effects afterwards. So then we added the white titanium white to those ridges, essentially creating the illusion of movement in the water. So I was really happy with this overall piece, even though there was a bit of problems with the resin pour. I really should read the bottle. It said 3 millimeters, and I put way too much in there, and it overran my piece. But definitely I will attempt to do this resin again. This worked out pretty good. This is a flat surface. I was able to highlight those drywall ridges really nicely, gave it a real nice movement to the water. Alright, I know I briefly went by these new minis. Some of these are new, some of these are old minis by Firelock Games. I just wanted to show them off in the final walkthrough. Alright, if you guys like what we're doing here in the Plunder Den, make sure you smash that like button and consider subscribing to the Plunder Den and get first-hand information when I start these kind of projects.